Roswell, New Mexico. It's as quiet and peaceful today as it has been for decades. But on July 8, 1947, that tranquility was shattered by a local newspaper headline. Air Force captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. The story described wreckage of a flying disc found near a place called Corona and was based on a press release written by the public information officer at Roswell Air Base, Lieutenant Walter Haut.
This building here, building number 84, is a building I believe that they brought materials from the Corona crash and stored them in here temporarily.
The chief intelligence officer at the base, Major Jesse Marcel Sr., was sent out to the ranch to collect the crash debris and transport it to the Army Air Force headquarters for examination. In the meantime, newspapers all over the western United States picked up the story. But before Marcel had landed his plane and strange cargo, the Air Force issued a second bulletin.
By the time the B-29 with Jesse Marcel and some of the wreckage got to the headquarters 2 hours after they left in Fort Worth, Texas, the fix was already in to kill the story.
The second press release was far different from the first, saying the wreckage was actually from a weather balloon. Could the Army's top intelligence investigators have committed such a basic blunder, failing to recognize the mundane remains of a weather balloon when they first encountered it? No, says nuclear physicist and part-time UFO researcher Stanton Friedman, who's been investigating the Roswell crash for over a decade. He says that while Marcel was in the air, the Roswell base commander, Brigadier General Roger Ramey, got orders from Washington to cover up the incident.
And what he did was arrange for the wreckage of a weather balloon, the radar reflector on a weather balloon.
And for a while, the saucer saga was forgotten, and might have remained so if Major Marcel hadn't rekindled the fire in 1980. Just before he died, Marcel admitted that the weather balloon story had been fabricated to hide the truth. He told Walter Haut there really was a saucer crash.
He made statements to the effect that it was nothing of this world. It couldn't be bent, torn, cut, pierced, burned. He went through a whole list of them. He said, we just don't have the technology to produce material like I brought in from that ranch.
The government steadfastly maintains that there never was a crash near Roswell. But Friedman contends his research shows there was not just one, but two UFO crashes that day, the result of a spectacular mid-air collision. Which brings us to our close encounter of the third kind. Friedman says wreckage of the second craft landed some 200 miles away from the first. And this time, there were survivors.
When I first came up to the craft, the creatures were laying like this in a line, side by side. And the live one was over here.
Gerald Anderson says he was 5 years old when he and his family came across the unearthly wreckage and bodies.
And my dad was kind of right about here, and he was sitting like this. My Uncle Ted was standing more over here, kind of leaned over like this, and we're talking to this creature.
Anderson's story matches that of others who were in the area at the time. With the help of hypnotherapy, he's been able to remember the encounter with startling detail. His description matches those from people who claim to have seen aliens. 4 feet tall, grayish skin, large eyes, long skinny arms and fingers. Anderson recalls 2 aliens were dead, a third dying, and a 4th alien survivor seemed to be trying to communicate.
Then just suddenly he turned and he looked at me. And when that happened, all kinds of things just started happening inside my head. I started getting sensations of tumbling and falling and an awful loneliness, like there was no way he could possibly get back to where he came from.
Anderson says that within a matter of minutes, the military arrived, sealing off the area. The civilians at the site were threatened with bodily harm if they talked. Nevertheless, in the past 20 years, hundreds of witnesses have come forward, some daring to speak only on their deathbeds. Out in the New Mexico desert, there's no longer any trace of alien craft. Stanton Friedman says the story can't be covered up forever. There were simply too many witnesses.
We have testimony from over 200 people concerned with these events, people who handled the wreckage, people who described the bodies, people who had direct orders, military orders, to do this, that, or the other thing. We have consistent testimony that in a court of law would convict anybody of a crime.
Even with the overwhelming amount of testimony, the government has refused to acknowledge that either crash ever happened. None of the debris has surfaced, neither have any official documents, and most of the first-hand witnesses have died. As for the captured alien, the most often told story suggests that he lived for a few years at a military installation and then died of an unexplained illness in the early 50s.